If you ever heard a story that made your heart feel heavy, stay with me. And before I begin, I really want to know this from you. Where did you hear a story like this for the first time? Was it from a friend, a family member, or maybe from your own quiet memories? Tell me in the comments. Because the story I'm about to share isn't just a story, it's a lesson my heart learned a little too late. I left my parents for a better life, but one day I realized nothing in this world could ever replace them. I grew up in a small town, the kind of place where neighbors greet each other every morning, where every face is familiar, and where silence feels warm, not lonely. My home was simple. 3 small bedrooms, a little garden my father would water every evening, and a kitchen that always smelled like my mother's cooking. She used to hum while cutting vegetables, and somehow that sound was the safest sound in the world. We didn't have much money, but we had peace and love, and parents who believed that if their children smiled, they had everything. I remember my father waking me up early for school. He would knock on my door softly and say, "Rise and shine, sweetheart. New day, new blessings." He had this quiet kindness in his voice, the kind only fathers have. My mother would wait at the table with breakfast. She used to say, "Aap jitna seekh loge, utni zindagi aasan hogi." Learn more, and life will become easier. And I believed her. I believed every word she said. My parents had one dream, that I would study hard, become successful, and build a life where struggle wouldn't follow me like a shadow. When I finished school, I got a chance to move to the city. A bigger world, brighter lights, better opportunities. At least, that's what everyone said. My parents were proud. They packed my suitcase, put money in an envelope even though they didn't have much, and hugged me like they were sending a part of themselves away. "Call us every day," my mother whispered, and I promised I would. At the bus station, I turned back and saw them standing there. My father trying to smile through his watery eyes, and my mother clasping her hands like she was praying for me. That moment, if life had ever asked me to choose between dreams and them, I should have chosen them. But I didn't know better. Back then, I thought chasing success meant walking away. When I reached the city, everything felt big. Tall buildings, loud streets, endless faces rushing somewhere. Everyone looked confident, determined, like they belonged. And for the first time in my life, I felt small. But I kept moving. I studied, I worked, I pushed myself. Slowly, I made a name, built a career, earned money. People praised me. They said I was lucky, privileged, powerful. But they didn't know, every night, when the city lights faded and silence crept in, I would lie in my apartment and think of my parents, the kitchen light, the sound of my mother's voice, the way my father warmed his hands with tea on winter mornings. I missed it all. But I convinced myself that sacrifice was necessary. Success needed space and distance. At first, I called them every day, then every week, then, sometimes only on weekends, sometimes only when I remembered. Life does that to you. It makes you believe time is endless, that people will wait forever, that love doesn't expire. But it does. Not because hearts change, but because time doesn't wait for anyone. One winter evening, after a long, stressful day, my phone rang. My father's number flashed on screen. I stared at it for a second and pressed silent. I told myself, I'll call back later. I am tired. But I forgot. And the next morning, instead of calling them, I rushed to work. They never complained. Not once. They would say, "We know you're busy. We're happy you're successful." They never asked for anything, and maybe that's why I took their voice, their presence, their love for granted. Years passed. I visited them once a year, sometimes twice. I would bring gifts, fancy clothes, expensive sweets. They would smile like children, grateful for even the smallest thing. But what they really wanted wasn't gifts. It was time. It was me. And I never saw it. I was too busy chasing a life I thought was better. Then, one winter evening, I received a phone call. This time I answered immediately. It was my neighbor from back home. His voice was shaking. He said, "Beta, your father, he fell. He's in the hospital." For a second, my world froze. I felt like someone had ripped the ground beneath my feet. I packed my bag, rushed to the train station. The journey felt endless. Every minute felt like a punishment. Every passing mile felt like guilt tightening around my chest. When I reached the hospital, I saw my mother first. Her eyes were tired, face pale, hands trembling. She tried to smile. "Dumage, you came." And then I saw my father, lying still, breathing slow, tubes around him. He looked smaller than I remembered, weaker. I held his hand and whispered, "Baba, I'm here." He opened his eyes and smiled, not angry, not disappointed, just relieved. "Bus, Dumage. You came. That's enough." And in that moment, my heart broke in a way I didn't know hearts could break. All the money, success, praise, none of it mattered. What mattered was the time I lost, the moments I missed, the years I can never return. I realized something painful that night. Parents don't need your success. They just need you. I wish someone had told me earlier. I wish someone had shaken me and said, "Success means nothing if the hands that raised you are trembling." But that first night, when everything got quiet, I stared at the bedroom ceiling, and out of habit, I whispered, "Mom, good night." Except she wasn't in the next room anymore. She wasn't even a phone call I felt comfortable making. And for the first time since I walked out of the house, I felt something heavy in my chest, a quiet ache I pushed down and tried to ignore. I told myself it would go away. I told myself this was part of growing up. But growing up is not supposed to feel like losing pieces of yourself. The first months were peaceful. New furniture, new routines. Work in the morning, dinner together in the evening. Jason worked long hours, but I didn't mind at first. I believed sacrifices were normal. I believed independence comes with discomfort. But gradually, small things started to change. When I felt tired and didn't cook dinner, he would sigh. Not loudly, but enough to make me feel guilty. When I talked too long about my childhood, my parents, or funny memories from home, he would get quiet. Sometimes he would say, "You talk about your parents a lot." don't you think it's time to focus on us now? And that hurt. Even though his voice wasn't angry, it was calm, almost logical. So I stopped talking about home. I stopped mentioning my mom's humor. I stopped recalling the way my dad always tried to act serious, but would laugh first during jokes. I put all my stories, all my little memories, in a box inside my heart. A box I tried not to open, because every time I did, I felt guilty for leaving them, and I felt ashamed for choosing someone who didn't see the beauty I came from. Slowly, life became quiet, but not peaceful, lonely. Jason wasn't bad. He wasn't cruel. He just wasn't what home felt like. He was responsibility. He was adulthood. He was a chapter I rushed into without reading the book carefully. There were nights I sat by the kitchen window, watching city lights flicker like stars, wishing I could hear my mother calling me downstairs for tea. There were mornings when the silence felt so loud, it almost hurt my ears. And sometimes I would walk into the bathroom and burst into quiet tears, not because anything was wrong outside, but because everything felt wrong inside. Independence wasn't supposed to feel like abandonment. Freedom wasn't supposed to feel like loss. But life doesn't always teach lessons gently. Sometimes it teaches through emptiness. One Sunday morning, I woke up early. The sunlight was peeking through the curtains. The apartment was still. Jason was asleep. For a long moment, I just lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to nothing but my breathing. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, I whispered, "Mom." It just slipped out. A reflex, a cry from somewhere deep. And then I whispered again, "I miss you." That was the first time I admitted it out loud. And once truth comes out, it doesn't go back in quietly. My chest felt heavy, my eyes burned, and I curled up and cried. Quietly, carefully, so Jason wouldn't wake up and ask questions I wasn't ready to answer. Being strong all the time hurts more than anyone realizes. I thought love meant building a new home, but real love never asks you to destroy the old one. I learned that late, painfully late. But lessons don't spoil with time. Even late lessons can save pieces of your heart. The day I finally picked up my phone to call home, my hands were shaking. It had been months, months of pride, months of silence, months of pretending everything was fine. I stared at the contact saved as Mom Heart. It felt like staring at a locked door, a door I wasn't sure I deserved to open anymore. I whispered to myself, what if they're upset? What if they don't want to talk to me? What if I hurt them beyond repair? But deep inside, a small voice said, call, just call. Even if you cry, even if words tremble, call. So I did. The dial tone felt like it was echoing inside my chest. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3 rings, then the click. And her voice, soft, familiar, warm, like stepping into sunlight after a long winter. Hello? I froze. I tried to speak, but no sound came. So I breathed. And then in the smallest voice, I said, Mom. There was silence. A silence so still I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. Then her breath caught, just a tiny sound, but I heard it. A mix of shock, relief, and 1,000 unspoken emotions. "Baby?" she whispered. Just one word, and it broke me. I started crying, not loud, but like my soul was trying to breathe again after being underwater too long. "I'm sorry," I managed. "I'm so sorry, Mom." Her voice shook, but she didn't scold me. She didn't ask why I disappeared. She didn't remind me of the pain I caused. She just said, "It's okay. You're here now. That's all that matters." And I cried harder because real love is quiet like that. It doesn't punish you. It just waits, softly, patiently, like a porch light in the dark, guiding you home. That evening, I sat at the dining table with tears still drying on my face. Jason walked in and saw my swollen eyes. He placed his keys down slowly. He asked, "Did something happen?" I hesitated, not from fear, but from exhaustion. I said finally, "I talked to my mom, and I I think I need to go see them." He didn't yell, he didn't argue, but he also didn't smile. He sighed, a long, heavy sigh. His words stung, not because they were harsh, but because they were careless. Love doesn't push you away from home. It supports every piece of you, even the ones rooted in your childhood. And in that moment, I realized something quietly painful. I chose someone who saw my parents as my past, not as the foundation that built me. And foundations matter. More than walls, more than paint, more than new keys or new addresses. Because without a foundation, everything we build feels shaky. The next morning, I packed a small bag, just a few clothes, a sweater my mom once folded for me, and the old scarf she knitted when I left for college. I didn't take much because I wasn't going home to stay forever. I was going home to breathe, to remember who I was before pride made me someone else. I messaged Jason, "Going to my parents, back in a couple days." He replied minutes later, "Okay, take care." No heart emoji, no warmth, just words, cold and flat. And strangely, I wasn't angry. I wasn't broken. I was just clear. Sometimes life doesn't shatter with noise. Sometimes it cracks softly, like thin ice under quiet footsteps. And those quiet cracks are the most dangerous ones because you don't hear them until you've already fallen through. When I reached my parents' home, I stood outside the front door for a long moment. The house looked the same: small porch, little wind chimes, soft curtains in the window. Nothing had changed, except me. My hand lifted, trembling, and I knocked. For a second, I wanted to run, hide, pretend I never left. But then the door opened. My dad stood there, older, quieter, eyes tired but shining. He didn't say a word. He didn't ask why I came. He just looked at me, and his eyes filled with tears he tried to hide by blinking fast. And then he whispered, "Welcome home." Not, "Why now?" Not, "Where were you?" Just, "Welcome." I stepped inside, and my mom came from the kitchen. She looked at me, really looked. And in that moment, time didn't exist. She opened her arms, and I fell into them like a child again. Her embrace felt like forgiveness, without a single word spoken. Her hands on my back felt like years of patience holding me together. And in that moment, I understood something I had been too foolish to see. The world gives you people to love, but parents give you a place to return, always, even when you're lost, even when you're late, even when you think you don't deserve it. Love doesn't count mistakes. Love waits. We did not speak for a while, not because there was nothing to say, but because silence sometimes understands more than words ever can. My mother gently held my face in her palms like she used to when I came home from school tired and defeated. "You look thinner," she whispered. Her voice was soft, not accusing, not dramatic, just full of quiet concern. I tried to smile. "It's just life," I murmured. But she shook her head slowly, as if to say, "Life shouldn't take this much from you." She guided me to the old sofa, the same one where I once studied, ate snacks, laughed, cried, dreamed. I sat down, and the cushions felt like memory, soft, familiar, comforting in a way that no new furniture ever could. My father walked to the kitchen and returned holding 2 cups of tea. His steps were slower than I remembered. He placed 1 cup in front of me, the steam rising gently like a small prayer. He didn't say, "You should call more." He didn't say, "We were worried." He just sat across from me, hands clasped, watching me the way a parent watches a child they don't want to lose again. The tea smelled exactly like childhood, cardamom, warmth, home. I wrapped my hands around the cup, not just for the heat, but because holding something warm felt like holding a part of them. My mother sat beside me, close enough that our shoulders touched. That little touch, it meant more than any speech. After a moment, she spoke quietly. "You don't have to explain anything." Those words broke something inside me because I prepared explanations, long ones, defensive ones, practical ones. But she didn't need my reasons. She only needed me. My father finally spoke, his voice steady, gentle. "Life takes us far sometimes, but it only feels far if the heart goes too." I looked down, a tear slipping before I could stop it. I thought I needed distance to grow. I thought moving forward meant leaving things behind. My dad nodded. "That's how young people learn. You walk your own road. Then one day you turn and you see the road that led you there." My mom wiped my cheek with her thumb, just like she did when I was little. "You came home," she said. "That's what matters. Nothing else." And in that simple sentence, I felt forgiveness melt over me like warm sunlight. I didn't feel judged. I didn't feel questioned. I felt accepted. It was quiet, not a dramatic reunion. No loud tears, just soft ones. And sometimes the softest moments are the loudest inside the heart. When I finished my tea, my mother stood up and went to the old cabinet in the corner. She opened a drawer and returned holding a small photo album, worn edges, slightly faded cover, the kind that holds more than pictures. It holds time. She placed it on my lap.
Look, she smiled softly. You used to hate your school uniform so much. I opened the album and the first picture showed me as a child. Messy hair, big grin, socks mismatched. I laughed through a tear. I still hate uniforms, I joked. She touched my hair. Just a little pat, the way moms do, without thinking. Page after page, I saw myself growing up. Birthday cakes, first day of college, me holding my acceptance letter with pride. And suddenly I saw it, the thing I had forgotten. They were there for every beginning I ever had. Every first step, every nervous milestone, every dream I dared to speak aloud. And I had left them out of the biggest chapter of my life, not because I stopped loving them, but because I thought independence meant distance. But independence without love is just loneliness, dressed as strength. As I turned another page, I whispered quietly, I'm sorry for leaving like that. My mother shook her head gently. You didn't leave. You grew. Sometimes growth is messy. My father added with a soft smile. We raise children not to keep them. We raise them so the world doesn't break them. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Not from pain, but from the overwhelming realization of what unconditional love really looks like. Not possession, not control, just presence. Even in absence. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. Coming home didn't solve everything. It didn't magically fix the distance I created. It didn't suddenly make me the perfect daughter again, but it gave me something I didn't know I was starving for. A place where I didn't have to be strong. A place where I didn't have to deserve love to receive it. A place where my mistakes didn't disqualify me from belonging. A place called home. That night, I went to my old room. The door creaked the same way, the curtains still had tiny golden patterns, and the faint smell of old books and talcum powder hung in the air. My bed looked smaller than I remembered, but when I lay down, it felt like it expanded just to hold me again. Not perfectly comfortable, not luxurious, but familiar in a way luxury could never be. I stared at the ceiling, the one I used to look at when dreaming about a bigger life, a life I thought existed somewhere else. Funny how sometimes you chase the world only to find your heart was waiting right where you started. The house was quiet, too quiet, until I heard soft footsteps near my door, then a gentle push, barely a sound, and my mother's face peeked in. She didn't say anything, didn't disturb me. She just looked, like mothers do, to make sure I was okay. She smiled like she used to when she checked on me as a child, and slowly closed the door again. That silent act broke me more than any argument ever could. Not because it hurt, but because love like that isn't loud. It's patient. It waits for you to return to yourself. The next morning, sunlight touched my face. No alarm, no rush, no pressure. Just birds outside, the smell of fried eggs, and my mother's voice calling softly from the kitchen. I walked out and saw my father reading the newspaper, glasses low on his nose, tea steaming beside him, just like every morning when I grew up. "Good morning," he said, like nothing had changed and everything had. My mother placed a plate in front of me: eggs, toast, a little fruit, and a glass of milk I didn't even ask for. "Eat," she smiled. "You must be tired." I ate quietly. There was peace in that silence. Not awkward, just full. Full of everything I didn't know I missed. Halfway through breakfast, my phone rang. My husband. For a moment, I froze because I left my parents thinking marriage meant starting a new family. But I forgot that hearts don't divide, they expand. I picked up. "Hey," he said softly, "I hope you reach safely." His tone wasn't angry, just tired, like both of us had been trying so hard to pretend everything was perfect. "I'm here," I whispered, "with Mom and Dad." There was a pause, not silence, a pause where two hearts think. "I know they missed you. And I should have supported you better." I breathed in slowly. That sentence felt like a bandage on a wound that had been open too long. "We're learning," I replied. "We both are. Come home when you're ready. No rush." Home. Funny word, considering where I was sitting. Maybe home isn't a place. Maybe it's people who don't let go, even when you do. After hanging up, my father folded his newspaper quietly. Marriage doesn't replace parents, and parents don't replace marriage. Love isn't a competition, it's a balance. My mother added softly, "Just don't forget yourself in the middle." And there it was, the lesson I didn't know I came home to learn. We don't leave our parents because we stop loving them. We leave because we think growing up means growing away. But the heart, it never leaves where it learned to beat first. When I packed to leave later that day, my mom slid a small lunchbox into my bag, like she always did when I went to school. My dad walked me to the gate, hands behind his back, trying not to look emotional. I hugged them both. A long, warm, quiet hug. No dramatic tears, just a deep knowing. Distance doesn't break families. Silence does. Pride does. Ego does. But love, quiet, patient, forgiving love, heals everything in time. As I sat in the car, my mother touched my head through the window and whispered, "No matter where life takes you, this door never closes." And my father added with a smile, "Just remember where your first home is." The car started moving. I waved. They waved back. Small hands, big hearts. And I knew growing up isn't leaving. Growing up is realizing what and who really matters. Nothing replaces parents. Not comfort, not success, not distance, not time. Some bonds don't weaken when stretched, they deepen. And sometimes you have to step away from home to understand why it will always be your safest place. If you felt this story, if it reminded you of someone, if it touched even one quiet place in your heart, send this video to your parents. Call them, thank them,